Mr. Speaker, this bill is obviously very important because, above all, it has to do with our international trade. And as we know, Canada is one of the countries, if not the country, with the most trade deals with foreign countries. And I'd like to commend the member for Abbotsford, who for nearly 6 years was Minister for International Trade under the Harper government, Prime Minister Harper. And the member for Abbotsford has an exceptional record, giving Canada access to over 40 countries. So his legacy is great for all of Canada, and I'd like to give him a shout out today. Now, the question before us is, obviously the world changes. The world is constantly changing. China wasn't as alarming in the past as it is today. It's unfortunate what's happening in China these days, particularly for Chinese citizens, especially because of the authoritarian attitude of that government. It's poisoning international relations, including trade relations. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, it's absolutely necessary for this government to strike out in a new direction to make sure that everything is protective of our national security. We proposed about a dozen amendments. 4 were accepted. Before I go any further, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say that I had the privilege under the Honourable Candice Bergen, who left this place a couple of years ago, but I was the shadow minister for international trade at that time, and Ms. Bergen was the one who allowed me that extraordinary experience, and I was really overwhelmed. I was impressed by the work of our colleagues at the department, the officials who do very meticulous work that often has impact and ramifications in other areas. So I'd like to salute the work that the member for Nova Scotia did, or the member for Bay of Quinte, who was on the committee with us back then. And great work was accomplished. Also by the member with a really long riding name, Montmagny, Lillet, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. I think is that the end of it? Did I get it all in there? Lillet, I missed a word. Okay, sorry for the lack of decorum when it comes to accurately naming my colleagues' ridings. If there's one thing I don't like about federal politics, it's how long the riding names are. Provincially, they're nice and short. Anyway, okay, I got a bit carried away there. Do you agree?
Once the Winnipeg North member from the Liberal Party support me. That's great. Finally, never too late to be good. Never too late to be good. Bon, revenons aux choses.
So, in all seriousness, this is a serious bill. As I was saying, this bill, the purpose of it is to tighten up the rules around international trade when dealing with countries who are no longer friendly, countries with a hidden agenda, cowardly, deceitful countries that are a danger to our national security. So unfortunately, in the past 8 years, there have been very serious incidents, in our opinion, when it comes to international trade. In 2017, the Minister of Industry did not ask for a full review on national security grounds of the acquisition of North Star International and its subsidiary Sinclair by a Chinese company that was state-owned. And so an in-depth review was not done. In 2020, to add insult to injury, the Foreign Affairs gave a contract to a state-owned company to provide X-ray equipment to 170 Canadian embassies and consulates. This was a Chinese company called NewTek, and they had direct links to the Chinese government in Beijing. And we've sent that equipment out into 170 of our embassies. It's incredible. How did the government allow this to happen? So more than ever, we need to tighten up the rules around foreign investment review. And the other example I have is no better. In December 2022, the RCMP revealed they entered into a supply contract for sensitive communications equipment and technology from Hytera Communications, which was working with a Canadian company, CanQuest Communications. And that is a major supplier of the Chinese government. So the RCMP is contracting with them. So more than ever, there was a need to take action. And that's why we see the government's willingness to act in this arena as a positive thing. And that's why we worked very seriously on clause by clause at committee, where we proposed around a dozen amendments, and only 4 of those were accepted. One is to lower the threshold for a national security review down, and for countries not on the list of investors, in order to make sure that all investments are reviewed. And we'd like to add that for countries that we have free trade deals with, the fact is that we can continue to transact with those companies. The second amendment that was, conservative amendment that was accepted, was to ensure that there was an automatic national security review each time a company has already been found guilty of corruption. So that's a very good thing. We definitely needed that. A third amendment to ensure that reviews conducted under national security, on national security grounds, be not just for new entities and for new stock purchases. So if someone wants to buy, a foreign company wants to buy part of a Canadian company, shares in a Canadian company, well, that would be reviewable. And so that has to be paid close attention to. And finally, the fourth conservative amendment that was accepted was to create an obligation for the minister to automatically trigger a national security review each and every time the threshold for foreign investment is reached. And this requires a minister to examine all investments or acquisitions in Canada when the value exceeds $1.9 million, instead of just being a choice, an optional choice that's made. So that's why, Mr. Speaker, in this situation, more than ever, where our country is a free trading nation, more than ever, terrorism and the attitude of certain countries like Russia and Putin, the wanton, reckless, callous attitude of that regime, not just when you look at what's happening in Ukraine. So our country has to be more vigilant than ever when it comes to international trade. We need to restore confidence among our trading partners, those we have trade deals with, for example. Mr. Speaker, before I wrap up, Madam Speaker, because I see there's been a change in the chair occupant, I have to say that the Prime Minister announced today that the carbon tax was going to be scrapped on residential heating fuel. I applaud that. And I'd just like to remind everyone of one thing, and that is almost a year ago to the day, this House spent a full day debating that proposal, which was put forward by the member for Carleton, the leader of the official opposition, and who voted against that motion, which has just today been announced by the government a year too late, the Liberal Party, with the support of the NDP and the Bloc. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, yes, indeed, a vote for the Bloc will cost you dearly. But with this bill, know that we take a positive view of this, and we obviously want to see it pass. Thank you, Madam Speaker.